Hey, this is Bryce Harper, and welcome to the Philly Show.
Hey, everybody. Ruben Amaro Jr., Jim Salisbury, Todd Zolecki are here, brought to you by the Foul Territory Network. It is Thursday, October 31st, 2024. It's Halloween. Ooh, Halloween. How are you guys doing? You guys doing good?
How are you doing?
We're doing good. We talked with Preston Mattingly on Tuesday, and a lot of fun. And we really could have kept going. There was a bunch of other guys that we didn't even ask about, like Eberson Castellano, who's their Paul Owens Award winner, is minor league pitcher of the year. Didn't ask about it. There's a couple other guys we didn't really dig into, but learned a lot. It was fun talking to Preston. When you think back about that interview, Jim, what jumped out at you about any impressions on any of the guys he talked about the state of the system, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot jumped out at me. Something you and I talked about in planning for that interview. There's just more guys to talk about nowadays.
Yeah.
More guys to talk about than there were, 4, 5, 6 years ago. So they've brought more quality material, ingredients into their system, and then you hand them over to the player development people, and that's what the department Preston heads up. I thought it was really good talking about guys. I mean, some of these guys I am really excited about. I think we all know about Andrew Painter and what he's doing. Aiden Miller, another number one pick out of the state of Florida, shortstop, third baseman, really interesting guy, all-around player. Mega prospect. It was fun hearing about him, and kind of one thing that jumped out to me that Preston thinks he could play second base as well. So shortstop, third base, second base, they really have options, positional options with this kid, depending on where there might be a need as things evolve in Philadelphia and he gets closer to coming to Philadelphia. So I thought that was very interesting. His stance on starting pitching was very interesting. I know that was something kind of music to Ruben's ears. With Justin Crawford, I've covered this team for a long time, and there just hasn't been that steady center fielder that you can count on year after year after year. It's kind of been a sinkhole out there, running guys through all the time. And, this is the guy that might have the staying power to fill that role. And maybe sooner than we think. I'm not saying April of 2025, but as he keeps, getting closer to Philadelphia, it might not be all that far away with a guy like Justin Crawford. So really interesting interview. I would, anybody who missed it, I would encourage them to go back and check it out. What jumped out at you, Ruben?
Yeah, I'll stay macro on this thing. And when I say macro, I'll talk a lot about, more philosophy than anything else, because that's what I'm sort of interested in, and how that they're developing the players. And it just seemed like on a couple different levels. You mentioned the one thing about starting pitching. I think I liked his answer about him talking about, I hope they don't change like the rules of the starting pitching stuff, because I totally agree with that. And it just seems like they're trying to develop guys for more length. And I think that is something that's an important element of the game that has been basically tossed aside. And I think it's a detriment to the game that guys are not getting stretched out to the point where they're able to pitch 6, 7, 8 innings instead of, 4 or 5. And you see it in the World Series. You see it, it just puts too much pressure, I think, on a team to cover the innings that are necessary. And I think if you look at our big league team, look at the 3 or 4 guys at the top of their rotation. And I mean, they expect those guys to go 6 or 7 innings every time out. And I'm hopeful that philosophy sort of works its way down. And it sounds like it is with Preston. I'm also really impressed by Preston just overall, just listening to, the overall development. Like, people want to just throw guys at the big leagues and just move them up as quickly as possible. And I think they will be aggressive. But there's also you have to sort of let the player dictate. The player will dictate your overall plan. Not everybody is moved in the same way. Not everybody can handle different levels and different in the same way. And I think and the fact that they're taking everybody on an individual basis and making sure that they have certain markers and challenging them in a certain way, I think that was also really impressive as well.
So So Aiden Miller is, obviously, one of the top prospects in baseball. He's the Phillies' #1 prospect. And Dave Dombrowski a couple weeks ago, kind of like, I don't want to say threw cold water on his ability to help the team next year, but he said, he's a ways away yet. Jim, you mentioned this a couple times. The guy was in high school a year and a half ago. But I'm wondering, do you think there's any chance that he could help this team next year? Ruben, let me ask you this question as a GM, right? When Dave says something like that, is that 100% like this guy's got no shot, or is he just trying to temper expectations, or is he trying to like maybe, chill the player out a little bit so he's not running, because on one hand, Dave will say like, I'm not afraid to promote young players if they're ready. Preston said the same thing. Now it's a big difference between going from Jersey Shore to Reading, but if this guy goes out and he starts his season in Reading, and he plays great, and then he gets promoted to Lehigh Valley and he plays great, why stop him? If there's a need at the big league level, where do you kind of feel that situation could be at?
Well, I think more than anything else, it's probably tempering expectation, but but Dave's been around a long time. I mean, there's not a lot of players. It doesn't happen very often that these young players can move that quickly and be impactful at the major leagues, at the major league level, especially position players, unless it's a player who's been playing a long time and was playing since he was 16 or 17 years old in the system, as an international player. It's different. It's different being a domestic player and being an international player, just because I think the reps are different. The amount of time on the field itself is different. But Dave Dombrowski's not afraid to move guys. I mean, I've seen him do it with Andrew Benintendi. I've seen him bring guys to the big leagues. He's not afraid to make that move. And I think they'll probably just allow the player to dictate his path. And my dad always said the same thing, and I believe that Dave Dombrowski has the same sort of philosophy as does Preston Mattingly, that the player will dictate how quickly you're in the big league. When your time to be in the big leagues is here, then you will be in the big leagues and you will be impactful. I don't think that they want these players to necessarily feel like they're saviors, but at the same time, if they feel that they're ready to be in the big leagues and there's a place for them to play in the big leagues consistently, I don't think that they're going to be afraid to move guys forward.
Yeah, I agree with Ruben. I think I've been around GMs that tamp down expectations just to protect the player a little bit. Players gung-ho and players so focused on getting there, maybe he doesn't, focus on where his feet are at the moment. I'm not saying that's the case with Aiden Miller. By all indications, he's a really mature, level-headed gamer, baseball player. But he, we've always said, the player will tell you when he's ready, and if there's a hole, they'll put him in. A need, they'll slot him in. I think even if he spends all of next year in the minor leagues, all of 2025 in the minor leagues, and gets here in 26, I still think that's a fast, rapid ascension.
Really rapid.
Yeah. So very encouraged by what I see of him, what I read about him, what I see on the stat sheets and some of the other metrics, and just to hear it from the farm director's mouth. I mean, we used to call them farm directors. Now there's so much more to but
vice president of player development.
Yeah, and it is about development, and his development is not done yet. You can still, gosh, I mean, like we said, he just was in high school a year and a half ago. Yeah. Let him breathe a little bit. Let him have a lot of ups, and let him learn from a few down times, and you'll get a good looking player in Philadelphia. And like I said earlier, it really intrigues me. They think he can play 3 positions. I mean, that adds a lot of value to a guy.
Yeah, and I want to do
an organization where you can slot him in where your biggest need might be.
And again, I mean, that's part of the development. I mean, you do not want to have this guy have 7 or 8 games at second base and then all of a sudden have him play second base in the major leagues. That's just not the way to do it. I think you're putting a guy in a very, very difficult position. Development, I'd rather have – I know that there's development in the major leagues, but I'd like to have the guy closer to being an actual major league product when he hits the major leagues than what we have seen in the past in some organizations that are basically – just throwing guys to the big leagues and saying, go get them. O'Neal Cruz is one of those guys. There's Ellie De La Cruz, who's super talented. Maybe he was ready, but there's so many different guys that are being thrown to the major leagues so quickly. And it's in some ways unfair to the player. Some guys it's great for, some guys it's not, but it's not something that should be happening on a daily basis, because I think that certain guys can handle it and other guys cannot.
Ruben, when you were running the show, you guys took a lot of heat for Ryan Howard's trajectory to the big leagues. Oh, they kept him down too long. You could even make the case that you took some heat for Chase Utley's trajectory to the big leagues. Oh, he was behind guys. He didn't get here fast enough. They should have gotten those guys here fast enough. Really, all you ever hear on that matter is criticism. When, if you look at it, Utley came here and it was a good player right away. Ryan Howard came here and hit 300, like right out of the gate. There is an argument to be made that maybe the Phillies did it the right way. Like there used to be a time where you got 500 at-bats at every level, right, and really mastered those at-bats and got a season at every level, and then came to the big leagues ready to be a real contributor. So, I get what you're saying, and I think we can't lose sight of that just because prospects are so much more hyped these days, and there's so much more video and social media,
right,
and we're thirsty to see them, that it still takes time to develop a quality major leaguer, no matter how talented that guy indeed is.
And it's not just about developing a major league player. It's about developing a winning major league player. I mean, that's part of it too. And so there are some dots, some I's that need to be dotted and some T's that need to be crossed. I mean, Preston Mattingly said it himself. There's a huge gap between AAA and Major League Baseball right now. There really is. And just because a guy is, swinging a bat, maybe even just as big from AA to major leagues. And so just because the guy's having success at the AA level does not necessarily mean you're going to be a successful player or ready to play in the major leagues. Sometimes it takes some time. And I think everybody's an individual here. But I'd like to think that we did do the right for some of those guys. Maybe the players didn't feel that way because they probably thought they should be in the big leagues. But hey, well, again, they made their marks, and they've had great years.
Well, I know Ryan Howard didn't, because I remember the time that Harold Reynolds went on Baseball Tonight and said that his brother sent a fax to the Phillies demanding a Ryan Howard trade. You remember that? I remember.
Oh, I know.
I remember. This is so funny.
His brother being Larry, the agent.
Larry Reynolds, the agent. Larry Reynolds, the agent. Harold comes on.
Who's a great agent and then was fired, obviously.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. But I will remember this. I was driving home that day, and my office called. This is like, just flip phones and whatever. And they go, Harold Reynolds went on and said the Phillies, Larry Reynolds, Howard's agent, faxed over a trade demand. So I'm like, oh crap. All right. So I pull over on the side of the road. I pull into a parking lot. I call Ed Wade, who was the GM at the time. And I said, hey, Ed, I'm calling about this report. Larry Reynolds faxed over a trade demand. He's like, that is correct. And I said, what's your response to that? And Ed goes, duly noted. In other words, like, this is not how trades work. A guy
go shit in your hat.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, exactly. Like a guy with no big league service time, no matter how good he is, cannot demand a trade. And obviously, they end up trading. Pat ends up trading Tomey, and Howard, comes up and becomes MVP in 2006. So one other guy that Preston talked about, which I think it's going to be such a big important season for him, not that this season wasn't important, was the development of Mick Abel. He mentioned that he thinks hopefully that these struggles this year will help him in the long run. He is still only 22. He played high school baseball in Oregon. He missed time because of COVID. So you can make the argument that he's behind a lot of other guys in terms of his development. But this was a guy that we've talked a lot about that should have been in position to be that number 5 starter this year and lock down that number 5 starter spot instead of the parade that they had late in the season. Big year for him too. If he could actually turn a corner. Wow. Now they're in good shape with Payne and Abel again. Really, kind of how they envisioned it.
Yeah, that would recreate obviously a whole different set of areas of depth for them, and that's no question about it. But everybody's different, man. Everybody has to go through ups and downs. Their bodies and their minds have to be developed, and sometimes it just takes some more time than others for certain guys. And hopefully that's what happens. They have the ability. It's not about the stuff. It's not about the arm strength. It's not about any of that. It's really about whether their makeup allows them to get to the place where they can, mechanically do what's necessary to be an effective major leaguer.
And on the current event side, we get into a little bit about selectivity at the plate for hitters and not chasing. And he said something I agree with. I mean, you got to bring those guys into your system. You got to draft them and acquire them, because those skills are often in place on a young player long before he gets to your system. You can tweak them, you can improve them, but the guy usually has that innate ability to control the strike zone, or at least something he developed as a young player and carried it forward. So it's tough to take a guy who's chased his whole career, his whole life, and has a high chase rate, and all of a sudden turning him into Mr. Selectivity. So you got to be eyeballing those players and bring them in and then tweak them along the way if you really want to kind of change the organizational or make it an organizational strength, I should say.
I mean, hitting is it's a skill. It's like a real God-given skill, eye-hand coordination, being able to take your barrel of your bat to a 90+ 97 mile an hour cutter or fastball or changeup or breaking ball. That is an actual skill set that is God-given. You can improve on it. You can get better. There's ways to get better, but it's like saying, this guy's instinctive. Well, he was born with that instinct. He didn't develop the instinct. You can get better and become a smarter player, but that instinct that is innate and something that comes God-given. And, that's what he was talking about as far as just bringing them into the system. You got to bring those guys in who have that ability already.
You talk about chase rate and swing and miss, and I've been watching the World Series, and I have seen Aaron Judge's struggles, and it's all over TV, and all over the internet and all over everything. He's swinging and missing a lot. He's chasing a lot of pitches, and man, I'm watching these World Series games, and I'm going, you really appreciate how good Bryce Harper is, considering how this guy gets nothing in the strike zone to hit. I mean, I went and I looked at the numbers today, and pitches in the strike zone, Bryce Harper, like 38.5% in the last 3 postseasons. He's ranks 81st out of 83 hitters that have seen like 50 or more pitches in the strike zone. In terms of, overall pitches in the strike zone, he gets nothing to hit. And this guy still puts up major numbers, OPS over like 1.1, hitting almost like 330 I think 325 in the postseason in the last 3 years. That really jumped out at me as you see Aaron Judge struggle with it. And you go, he's actually seeing more strikes than Bryce Harper does. I know it's kind of not exactly apples to apples, but that jumps out.
There's so much there. Focusing on Bryce. I mean, obviously he's a remarkable player. If you can put, like when Bohm was productive May, June, Harper was the player of the month. Get that little bit of, give that pitcher a little something to think about with a protective bat behind him makes me even better. And then on the whole Judge thing, like legacies and reputations can be built in the postseason, or at least enhanced. I mean, he's an MVP. He's a future Hall of Famer already, I would say. And but your resume, a great resume includes postseason success. I mean, it's probably like you look at a guy like Schilling, and I think he got a lot of Hall of Fame votes. Obviously, I'm not going to get into it. He's not in the Hall of Fame, but he had a lot of Hall of Fame supporters, and a lot of people hung their support for him on what he did in the postseason. So postseason can really enhance a guy's reputation, his resume, whatever you want to call it. And he has struggled, and he is struggling in this one, and he's doing it in a market where they put so much emphasis on the postseason and so much glare on it. It'll follow him unless he turns it around and has a great postseason and wins a championship someday.
Yeah, I know you need to think about great players who struggle in the postseason. Barry Bonds, I mean, one of the best hitters, the best hitter I've ever seen, and he struggled in postseason. Played and didn't have as many reps, I guess, but didn't have a ton of success either. Listen, it's a different ball game. People who don't think it's not a different ball game in the postseason, you're wrong, especially when there's really high expectations. I think Aaron Judge is caught in between right now, probably, expecting a lot from himself. And also, a nice job by the Dodgers of doing what they need to do to try to tamper his production. Yeah. So, hey, this is part of the game, but you feel for the guy because he's a great ambassador to the game, I think, great professional, and hopefully for his sake, he can turn things around.
Yeah. If not this postseason, then future postseasons. I remember John Elway couldn't win the big one until he won a bunch of them. So you can get that turned around pretty quickly.
I think great players are so cognizant of that how much postseason or playoff performance means, and then they press. And when you press, you're not yourself. You're not the guy who put up those big numbers all during the season. You're somebody else, and you can see it in just the way he's chasing pitches. Put too much pressure on yourself. It's really hard to perform up to your normal standard, because that normal standard is just natural.
So going back to that rate, Harper this postseason, 75th out of 79 players with 50 or more pitches in the zone. Below him are Shohei Ohtani, Trey Turner, Chris Taylor. Last three postseasons, only Corey Seager and Shohei Ohtani have seen fewer pitches in the strike zone. So again, what Bryce does is pretty remarkable.
No doubt.
Yeah, guys, it is Halloween Thursday night, and I thought I would share something that you guys might get. Yeah. So I found this picture. One of the kids in the neighborhood in my son's class went as Brandon Marsh a couple weeks ago. They had a thing at the school, and he ended up winning a prize for best costume in his grade. And I was like, Brandon Marsh, that's a good idea. And it reminds me of this. Take a look at this photo. This is me, probably 1982. Camera quality is not great. That is me in a Brewers costume. You get the picture quality is not great. That is a painted on handlebar mustache. That is me as Raleigh Fingers for Halloween. I went for, I love that costume so much. I went as Raleigh Fingers 2 years in a row.
2 years in a row
in 1983.
2 good years.
Yeah, Raleigh Fingers.
He's a man.
He was
Fireman of the Year or whatever.
So that was my Halloween costume when I was a kid. My mom painted it on. I had a Brewers jersey. I had a Brewers baseball cap, and that was probably one of my more memorable costumes when I was a kid.
I guarantee you, all three of us, that's how we learned through Raleigh Fingers. How we learned what a handlebar mustache is, the expression handlebar. And I can remember looking at that thing when he was pitching for the Oakland A's in the 70s.
Staring at it.
Asking my dad about it. He said, well, you have to wax it and curl it. And I love the story. So the A's all had facial hair, right? Mustaches. And I love the story about how they all, started growing mustaches. So Charlie Finley was the owner, and Reggie Jackson was on the team. And I think they had a facial hair policy that Charlie Finley liked his guys clean cut and clean shaven. But Reggie was his own guy, and he decided he was going to have a beard or a mustache or something. So Finley decided he was going to upstage Reggie, and he offered all the players $300 if they grew a mustache, so they would upstage Reggie so he wouldn't stand out. I love this. Todd, I had one encounter with Raleigh Fingers. I watched his whole career. He was great. Yeah. And he'd give you those 3-inning saves.
Oh, yeah.
And, when I was a kid, he got traded to the Red Sox for one day. He actually put on a Red Sox uniform, and then the commissioner rescinded the trade and sent him back to Oakland. But
really?
So when I think it was the Subway Series in 2000, Mets, Yankees, I camped out at the LaGuardia Marriott for 2 weeks. And I was in there on the treadmill one day, and Raleigh Fingers was on the next treadmill over. He was in at the World Series doing some promotional work, and he still had the handlebar. He looked great, and talked a little baseball with him. I tried not to, get under his skin, but it was really cool. And I said, I know this guy in Milwaukee who, wore a costume of you. No, I'm kidding.
So wait a minute. Awesome. So Jim, did you ever wear a costume of a player when you were? I think I may have gone with at the time. The Flyers were big, 74, 75. So when I was about 7 or 8 years old, 8 or 9 years old during that time, 9 or 10. I probably went with like a Rick McLeish or Bobby Clark or something. I'm sure I.
Jim, you didn't go as Bobby Orr?
Maybe even Bernie Parent. Did you ever go as Bobby Orr or anybody like that there?
I think I actually wore my hockey gear to school one day as Bobby Orr for a class Halloween party, but
nice.
I was just usually a bum. One year I was
you were yourself.
I'm dating myself here, but do you remember the show The Gong Show?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So they used to have this guy who used to come out called the Unknown Comic, and he wore a jacket and a tie, and he put a bag over his head. And I was that guy one year, the Unknown Comic, and then that was fun.
That is great. That's great. Fun. Well, I'm looking forward to Halloween tonight.
What about your favorite candy?
My favorite candy for sure is Reese's peanut butter cups. In fact, 2022, when the Phillies were in the World Series, they were in Houston. I think they were in Houston on Halloween. And I told my son, I said, do me a favor and anytime you can grab a peanut butter cup, grab a peanut butter cup. And God bless him. He loves me. He showed me my wife sent me a picture of his all of his goods afterward. He put everything on the living room floor, and there was a ton of peanut butter cups.
Nice.
So, yeah. So that made me feel good about myself.
What about you, Jim? What are your top candy?
I like them all. I love Reese's. I love peanut butter Twix, though. They're hard to find now. And
they are.
Baby Ruth, I've always been,
nice.
Partial to Baby Ruth. They're good ones. How about you?
I'm Reese's peanut butter cups got to be number one.
Yeah.
The chocolate peanut butter combo platter, it's just tremendous. But I also go with but I also am really big on Snickers and also really big on Almond Joys. Almond Joy has nuts.
Yeah, moms don't. That's right. That's what they say. That's what they say. Oh my gosh. We actually bought our Halloween candy a couple weeks ago, and I've slowly eaten all the peanut butter cups. So I'm gonna have to go out restock before.
Yeah, you got to regroup.
Yeah, before tonight. So anyway, I thought you guys would get a kick out of that Raleigh Fingers photo, and we'll be back next week. Offseason's going to be officially underway. See what the Phillies have up their sleeves over the next few weeks, and we'll be coming at least twice every week. So keep following us all offseason.
Let's go.
I'll talk to you guys.
Happy
later.
Halloween. Smell you later, boys.
Smell you later. Smell you, Jim.
The Philly Show is brought to you by the Foul Territory Network. Subscribe to The Philly Show on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. If you like us, give us a review. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, X, Facebook, and Threads. Find Ruben's analysis before, during, and after Phillies games on NBC Sports Philadelphia, on the Sports Radio 94 WIP Morning Show, and MLB Network. Find Jim at allphly.com. Find me at MLB.com, the Phillies Beat newsletter, and MLB Network.